What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This is the podcast where we dive into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora. That's right, a plethora, which means a lot of legendary guests. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's Rex with 3 X's. Don't get it twisted, kids. Ladies, you certainly understand the 3X rating. You're looking at me and you're saying, but what else do I know you as? Well, a.k.a. the King of Sleaze, a.k.a. the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, a.k.a. Diamond Dave Jr. Take one look. Undeniable that I am the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked several grams, got 1 million fans. I'm your ice cream man, Mr. Wop, Babaloo, Bop, Wop, Bam, Bam, Shazam. Hot damn. Feeling good tonight. And most importantly, looking good. And why? That's why. Put it in my holster. Just throwing this out to the hairspray companies of the world. Make holsters for these things, please. They are must-have accessories. And let me give myself a look. Play the old game of try to find a bad side, which doesn't had to give one more look. Joined as always by my consigliere, my confidant, my doorman, my head of security, the great Keith Hernandez puppet, a man who says very little, but when he does, it's always poignant. Coming to you as always from the lush, lavish, lavender lounge of love where it all goes down. Of course, this is the No Frills podcast. No frills, no technology, no cute intro theme, no shit bouncing across your screen. I'm an almost 50-year-old man and I know zero about technology. No editing, no nothing. Just me and kick-ass guests. What more does a podcast require? It's the simplest, strip it down to the bare bones of what the people really need and give that to them. Serve it up to them. Which is what I'm doing when I'm not playing in numerous glam and sleaze metal bands up and down the eastern seaboard. I'm also in a little band that you might have heard of called Love Sword, where I am the front man. So if you're a virtuoso player and you want to play behind the second greatest front man to ever do it, hit me up in the comments, bowl me over with your playing, lick your bass or your guitar. That's bonus points. Show me something. And of course, bringing you another kick-ass guest that you will see me invite right here, right now, that I hope you will wholeheartedly enjoy here on Pod Scum. I don't think there's any way to not enjoy my guests on Pod Scum because they are in that sea, that plethora that I spoke of legendariness. It's all I deal with. When you're a legend, when you're cut from the cloth of legend, you only deal. Legend recognized legend. That's what I'm saying. Hashtag that. Legend recognized legend. Make that my epitaph, if you will. Because that's what I want to be remembered as saying. That, and I'd also like to be remembered for not having a bad side. So, let's get down to the brass tacks here as I give my man here a little shout out, and here he comes. So let's do this on Pod Scum here. Let's get him in here and let's start chopping it up. You ready, Keith? Let's do this. I feel like the Jeopardy theme song. Should be playing right here. Hey, there you.
How's it going? Good. How you doing, dude?
I just want you to just sit back and just soak it in and tell me if it's undeniable right here that you're looking at father and son.
Oh my God, yeah, that's you're stepping out of a time machine there. Holy
shit. It is, right?
Wow.
And the most important thing about these 80s guys, though, that I always find fascinating, the smoldering look and a lot of chest hair.
yeah, that was big.
That's big.
Yeah, that was big back then. I know everyone's getting skinned or shaven and doing
Yeah.
the manscaping stuff, but
Yeah.
I think women like hair. I think they're someone needs to speak up.
Yeah. Someone does need to speak up. Well, I was listening to your Incognito album,
Oh,
which fantastic, by the way. And
thank you.
a couple of the bits. Well, first of all, I like the one about that guy that's always in the '80s Halloween movies, because I feel like I would love one of those kind of guys too, that could just jump out and tell me when I'm about to make a misstep in life.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I was watching that movie and I was like, God, like, if those people would have just listened to that guy, they
Yeah.
would have just their whole life would have been different. So I wish that I had that guy too, for sure.
A movie that really scared me, even though there wasn't an overt, like violent, not necessarily any kind of a monster or killer in it, but was Deliverance. Was there a guy that was warning them though about not going and fucking around with that river?
I think so, right? I mean, I believe so. That
I think
guy
when they
is
tried
such
to
a
go get the cars, one of those guys said, don't go down. You don't want to go messing with that river. So I thought there was somebody, almost like, making like a prophetic statement. Like, you're going to get into some shit here if you go forward with this.
right. Yes. Yeah. I believe so, because I believe that was a movie that I hadn't seen ever, and it was like a classic. And I finally watched that, and I think that's when that happened. It was that, or I can't remember another movie. Maybe it was like Jason or something. I can't remember.
I just had Jason on here the other day, man, or the guy who's playing him in his current form, though.
Oh, really?
That's an easy gig to get, though, I think. Not to take anything away from the guy's name is Jason Brooks, not to take away from or impugn his acting in any way. But I mean, that's the gig right there. When you can land a Michael Myers or a Halloween or Jason,
mm-hmm.
you just have to be like of good height and
no lines, just walk.
Don a mask, and a big part of it is walk your gait. That's huge.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. All those guys mentioned that. I also talked a couple weeks ago. One of the guys that did one of the Halloween movies. A lot of it is studying those guys who did it in the past and getting down mannerisms. That's big.
Really. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because they have to go back and look at the film and be like, okay, how am I supposed to walk? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. I talked to the guy that was in Halloween Resurrection. Not unfortunate for him, but in that one, Busta Rhymes got away.
Right.
He survived.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
That's pretty well. So how have you been throughout these pandemic times? How have you and your family been? Has it affected you much?
Honestly, man, I think I'm one of the few people that I found a good silver lining out of it, just to be like, as I was going so hard with comedy and being so busy with other stuff, that I was able to sit home and kind of see what not what I've been missing, because I always prioritize them, but just kind of being like, wow, this is kind of an excuse almost to not do comedy, because it's almost like when you're not grinding all the time, you start to feel guilty. I'm like, oh man, I got the hustle and the bustle. So then it was like, okay, nobody's doing this, so it's okay. And it felt good a little for like 2 days, and then I want to get it back out there.
But when you're not getting out there though, like are you still creating though? Like, are you writing material a lot? Do you try to keep busy and kind of like convince yourself that it's still working? I mean,
right. Yeah. So the only way to know if comedy ever works is you got to do it in front of people. I can write all day and be like, I think this is funny, but it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what they think. So I did write, I wrote a lot, and but I started to lose that kind of creativity, because you're like, I'm here again for 3 months in a row and nothing has changed. I don't have any interactions or anything to spark anything.
Yeah. I have the utmost respect for of all the different art forms. I mean, I'm blown away by rock stars and stuff like that, and people you see just pull off ridiculous shit on musical instruments and that kind of stuff. But stand-up comedy, first of all, because making people laugh is so subjective, and just getting up there and just you and a microphone and just hoping that people in the audience are going to find your shit funny is got to be nerve-wracking. I mean, what was your first foray into it? How old were you?
So an interesting story is I was 20 when I was 20 maybe when I first started. Like, I had a first open mic, and I had did really well, and the booker of the comedy club was like, "Hey, come back, please come back. I want to see you again." I was like, "Holy shit, I only did it one time." And then I came back. I did. I didn't know how comedy worked. I didn't know that they did like the same material and work on jokes and the craft and the wording and things like that.
Yeah.
So I come back and I essentially did the same thing just by chance. I'm like, oh, just do the same jokes.
Yeah.
And it went better. And then I had my third set. They were like, come back again. That was great. So I come back again, and I was like cocky. I was like, I'm gonna do all new stuff, new stuff, and fucking crickets.
Bombed. Yeah.
Crickets hard, man. Yeah. To the point where I essentially didn't do it. I didn't do it for close to let's see, 20. So 8 years. 8 years.
You were just so shell shocked by that experience.
So shell shocked. Like, literally, that's the worst thing that a human can experience, is trying to make people laugh, and then you're not doing that, but then realizing that, oh, that's what everyone goes through. It's not just like, oh, well, for me, it was like, oh, you're not cut out for this because of one time, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And I think through the annals of history, probably anybody who's done stand-up comedy, I don't think there would be one person who would ever make the claim that they didn't have a night where they were off or bombed. You know, even the best of the best comedians. And that's subjective. So whoever, your Mount Rushmore of comedians is, I'm sure they all had a shit night at some point,
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, it's the thing that was so refreshing to me is I went out to the Comedy Store. This is maybe 2018. And I saw, guys who were selling out theaters and starting to do arenas and shit like that.
Yeah.
And they're working on new material, and I saw them go up. Now, the thing about this is the Comedy Store is set up to where it's like a bunch of comedy fans, but no one is there to see a specific comic.
Right.
So it's not
made laugh.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not their audience. Right. So they're just there for comedy in general, and they're fans.
Right.
So you see someone, because when you start cultivating a fan base, it doesn't become, you still got to be funny, but like it becomes a little easier because they know you.
You got a plugged in audience, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You got Kevin Hart fans who just think anything Kevin Hart does makes me laugh. You know what I mean? Fucking funny. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. But I got to go up there and see these people that are like selling out theaters, working on new material and bombing, or like, essentially just getting a teetering of laughs with these new ideas.
Right.
And then they were doing these 15-minute spots. I saw one comic, I won't mention names, but the first 7 minutes, just quiet, dude. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I couldn't even believe what I was seeing. And then the last 7 minutes of his set, fucking murdering. So you could tell he was working on stuff or had some other stuff that he had that was a lot better. But so
probably get to a point where you're like, I got to go into the bag of tricks here and get a few laughs.
Right. Yeah. But that just was reassurance of being like, okay, this is going to happen forever, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, I agree. So after that long hiatus, what's the impetus to get you back into it? Did something happen, or did somebody get you back into it?
Yeah. So one of the things is that I had, my brothers, they were always encouraging me to go on, and Eric, my other brother, would always bring it up. He's like, hey man, you should go back. You should start doing comedy again. Cause obviously we're just trying to make each other laugh all the time.
Right.
And I was like, okay. I was like, no, I can't, you don't get it. I was like, dude, you don't get it, man. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
So my brother then passes away. And then 2 months later, I'm on stage where I'm just like,
sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay, dude. I appreciate it. But that was honestly the one thing that I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to not try it. And his words kind of sat with me for a long time, and then I was like, what have I got to lose? Because essentially losing a close family member like that is the most painful thing. So Pete, not getting laughs from strangers,
pales in comparison.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was kind of like so no, I appreciate that though.
So what is your specific, or do you have a specific ritual or a creative process? Like you go someplace specific in the house to create or write, or like, where do you go to get ideas? Like when you're going to create comedy?
So a lot of times I'll whether it's something, first of all, I try to write every day. I haven't been lately, but my goal is to write every day or every other day, sit down. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Right. So it's like almost like baseball, where it's like, look, you're gonna strike out some days regardless. You're not gonna come up with something fantastic every day. But I definitely sit down to write, and then there's other times where I'll think of something and I just type it in my phone so I don't forget, like a note or a premise.
Yeah.
And then I will go, I'm like, and I think of one punchline, and then I'll go on stage and just like almost talk it out, because I've had luck with that, because in your room, there's no adrenaline, or there's no urgency to make people laugh.
Right.
I still do that, but I will also get on stage and see what I say sometimes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes in the moment, it's like when you're around with your buddies, you're doing the story, or you're saying this thing and you're trying to make them laugh. Like, it's almost like your brain goes, hey man, make this funny now.
Right.
So not having the luxury of typing a couple words and then sitting back and be like, what else with that?
Yeah. I wish you wouldn't have made the baseball analogy, because everybody can't hear him. Only I can, man. But you might have offended Keith Hernandez puppet back there, man, because he swears he's never made a mistake on the baseball field or had it off.
Right. Yeah.
You don't say that about number 17. I mean, come on, man.
Right.
What was it like as far as like coming back after things started opening up again and starting to be able to perform again after the pandemic? How did you find crowds to be? Obviously, people were dying probably to get out to see some live entertainment in any way.
Yeah. That was hard, because if you were inside, there was like maybe 12 tables. And then they were like 12 feet apart from each other. So and comedy is this thing where you all have to get together and get, packed in. We're all laughing about some crazy shit together. Yeah. But when people are spaced out and you get one, it's comedy's like a little infectious a little bit. When people start to laugh, like the others will start to laugh around them, and it kind of builds. But the outside shows were the real challenge, where like, even if like I would get off, like you're doing shows in like parking lots, you're doing shows in a brewery with a garage door up, and then they got lawn chairs out there, and the laughs don't stay in a room, they just like completely they dissipate in the air. So
that's tough.
Yeah. So I would get off and be like, God, I fucking suck. And then someone else was like, oh dude, I thought you did good. But I can't, they're standing in the audience watching me and I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the tools that comics do a lot is they'll record their audio sets on their phone, place it on the stool, and then kind of figure out like whatever gets you go back and listen. You're like, okay, what did I say that got laughs, and keep that? Well, what did I say that didn't get laughs? Throw that away. But you rely a lot on, obviously, audio feedback is the only way to tell if something's funny. So that was hard. The outdoor shows, some of them are still going for some reason, but
I don't know the answer to this question, but I was talking about it with somebody at work the other day, and he told me a joke at work, and the joke's not the point, but we started to talk about the origin of jokes. Has anybody ever traced back to who the first people were and in what generation where they were making people laugh? There's no way to trace back, because a lot of the old jokes, you see somebody like Jackie Martling used to be on Howard Stern. He's made a career off of just telling old recycled jokes. Right. But has anybody ever really traced the history of like who the first, I mean, we read about medieval times, jesters entertained, kings and stuff like that. But, I mean, what were they doing? Were they actually telling jokes with punchlines, or was it more, juggling and fucking around and just amusing the king,
Yeah. I think it was amusing the king. I don't know who started the joke. Phase, but I would that's a great question.
Because the Bible doesn't seem chock full of a lot of people cracking good ones. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So where did it start? I mean, there's no jokes, there's no chicanery, there's none of that stuff up until, when, it's a weird thing to think about, somebody eventually had to come up with the very first joke.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it? A knock-knock joke, something stupid, was it why the chicken crossed the road? I mean,
something.
Yeah, it had to start somewhere. So, so it sounds like when you did that outdoor show and you're coming off the stage and you didn't hear what you thought you wanted to hear, that you're pretty hard on yourself. Are you really a hard critic on yourself?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think you have to be. You have to just say, look at something. How do I even if something goes well, it's like, how can I make that? How can I elevate that? How can I raise the bar here? And then sometimes you get in your head a little bit too, because like you can't make. They'll call their closer where it's like your best joke, you put it at the end to tie up the whole show. Yeah. And so sometimes like I think Jerry Seinfeld had said, like, you only come up with like 4 or 5 closers in your whole life, because it's like, that's the big thing that's got to be at the end. But, you start to make, like, for instance, when I first started, I would get laughs or from some of the jokes, and then I would come up with a joke that would fucking really nail them, and then I was like, well, shit, I have to make these other jokes match that one. I can't. So now you're chasing the dragon of like, I have to elevate everything. And the only way to do that is to be hard on yourself and be a hard critic. And that way you get better and better. And then, like I don't know, I probably had like 15 minutes of jokes that didn't make the album because I was like, they're not good enough. I mean, where it's just like, they're okay.
Right.
If someone told me to do 15 more minutes, I'd throw them in, but I wanted to be like, this is it. And I even pulled some ideas because I was like, this could be better. So, the live show was, I think like 55 minutes. And I think I took out like 4 minutes of joke or so.
So it's a craft like anything else though. And there has to be like a flow and with the way the jokes segue into one another. There's probably a lot more that goes into it than people think. You're not just coming up there just like rattling off jokes. I mean, there's a method to the madness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like you said, if a joke's a closer, it's kind of got to flow into that and set it up and kind of tie everything back around again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm pretty structured. Like, I know what I'm opening with, I know what I'm closing with, and I know the jokes that I want to do, and I want to make sure that it makes sense for me to get from this joke to this joke. There are maybe if I'm doing an hour, maybe there's like 2 points where it's just like where I try to like say an extra line or two to segue into with a new chunk that I'm talking about. But yeah, you're right. I like that. I don't. I like all different types of comedy, but I personally want to make mine like from A to B, and then it flows nicely. So,
well, you mentioned Jerry Seinfeld before. Are there people that that when you want to laugh that have made you laugh, over time? Who are some of the comedians that you look towards as whether they're influences or whether you're just extremely big fans of them?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So yeah, I love Seinfeld. I love the fact that he can, Brian Regan. I mean, just like, so silly. Like that's my style. That I laugh more at anything is just like how silly someone can be.
Yeah.
One person that sticks out is Dom Irrera. I don't know if
I know Dom. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So crazy. Actually, that's how I kind of like knew what stand up was. Dom was in my dad's wedding, so they were like buddies in college.
Okay.
And they stayed really tight. And we used to call him Uncle Dom. He would come over so much, and we would see him from time to time. And I remember going into a comedy club when I was maybe 13.
Yeah,
like I should not have been there, but he talked to the owner, and I remember seeing the owner like peer around him and go, Jesus, like fuck me. All right, well, just set him in the back,
Yeah, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah,
yeah.
We're turning our backs to letting kids in the club, but
right, yeah.
Those were the days. Hey, that's what we remember as the good old days.
Yes, yeah. So I remember just being in a comedy club and like feeling that around. I mean, dude, I don't remember laughing that hard. I mean, that was the hardest I laughed, and obviously half of it's going over my head.
Yeah.
But just the act outs and everyone, just the infectious laughter, and like to know that was a job, I was like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And shout out to Dom Herrera, because if I remember correctly, he parlayed his comedy into from what I remember from 80s TV, he used to pop up in shows as like from time to time, didn't he? He did quite a bit of television.
Yeah, he did a lot. He did he popped in on Drew Carey's show, Seinfeld. He was a janitor, I think on 1 or 2 episodes. And he did a lot. He did I was just talking about something about this today. I used to watch Hey Arnold, and he did one of the voices in there. I remember my parents coming in, and they're asking me to do something, and that show's on there. Oh my God, that's Dom. I was like, Dom's not in this show, and he was. He still gets residual checks from them.
Yeah.
So yeah. He was in a lot of stuff.
So it's in terms of the stand-up comedy world now, what is or your definition of like making it or getting successful? You've obviously got an album out. Is it getting on big tours? Is it landing sitcoms? Is it landing on Saturday Night Live? Like, where does a comedian go and that defines true success?
That's an awesome question. I think everyone's got their own barometer for what it is.
Yeah.
You know, for me personally, if I can make a decent, if I can contribute, like my wife has a job, she loves it. She wouldn't quit even if we hit the lottery. You know what I mean? So if I can make a decent amount to contribute, and I can, you know, hopefully headline clubs on weekends, that's, to me, that's like, I can't get any better. Right. I mean, that's the pinnacle, and that's hopefully what I'll be able to do. I've headlined a couple clubs, and I had a great one at Dead Crow in Wilmington, North Carolina, 2 weekends ago. And so I got a taste of it, and I was like, man, this is fucking killer. Now, not all the shows are good, because I've been a feature, which is the middle guy, and a host, which is the guy that opens the show. For the last 7 years, and I've seen good shows and I've seen bad shows, despite who the headliner is. So
you ever have any of those shows? I've had musicians on here, and of course, like a lot of them are like in heavy metal or extreme metal bands, so you don't expect a huge commercials, a lot of commercial success and huge stadiums packed to the gills necessarily. But have you ever had that show where you've come out, and if you have had it, how do you get motivated when you come out and there's like, you know, 5 fucking people there to perform to? You know?
Yeah. So are you talking about like worst bomb, or like how do you get?
Like how do you get yourself creatively inspired? Like when ta-da, here he is, and you just come out and there's like, you know, a couple of people clapping. They're like, how do you play it? You play it like you just telling some jokes for your friends in the living room, or like what do you? Because I had a guy on here who's a musician, and he says, you know, we all think it sucks. We look at each other and we just give it our all, and we treat it like it's just another band practice. We may have driven a couple 100 miles for it, but we treat it like another band practice, you know?
Yeah, I used to. So when I first started, and you get in those big shows, and then, you know, they have a late night Friday, and everyone's tired from their work day, and they're there. I don't even know why they're there sometimes, because late night Friday, like a show starts at 10, and they're almost just like, I want to go to bed right now. But those can be light sometimes. And before I was like, man, this sucks. This is terrible. But now I'm like, dude, these people are here. They showed up. Give them a show. I don't care if it's fucking 5 people, 12 people, or if it's
show goes on.
The show goes on. They paid to be entertained. Because when I first started, there was an open mic, and it was me and 3 comics drove to do this one open mic 45 minutes away, because we were trying to get as much stage time as possible.
Right.
To try to get better and better. And there's one audience member. And so we go, all right, let's just go. And then we literally went up to him, and we were like, do you want this to happen? And he's like, yeah, no, I came here to laugh. So, and I'm like, okay, let's each do whatever amount of time. And it was funny, because instead of like, and one of the guys was doing crowd work, and instead of being like, hey, do you guys ever do this? We were like, hey, Larry, have you ever done this?
Well, hey, the good news is, man, at least he's not a heckler, right? I mean, if you get one guy and he's a heckler, Jesus, man. An audience that's technically an audience of 0. You know? I mean,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Might as well pack it in and drive home. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of different genres in the music world. You know, there's different versions of comedy. There's people who have slants on different stuff. Like you mentioned, people that are more silly, more self-deprecating. What kind of humor do you put like your category in? Like, where do you get ideas? Like, do you feel like you're more like a realistic, you know, like Jerry Seinfeld talks to us a lot about everyday shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think something that I've maybe haven't realized until recently was, and actually probably till I had kids and started talking about them on stage, is people would come up to me and be like, oh man, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's really relatable. And I like being, for me, I would like, my goal is to be relatable and silly.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes I'll just tackle a vague subject and be like, engagement. What about engagement is funny. Like, then just start writing stuff. So it won't be like a specific thing. And other things are like a specific story where I'm like, all right, let's chop this up. But yeah, I guess silly. And I've heard relatable a lot. I did a joke.
I like relatable.
Yeah. And I think it really pulls the whole room together too.
And it's what you said, and it speaks to your point earlier about how the laughter kind of comes with like a communal and infectious type of thing. You know what I mean? Because I found last time me and my wife went to see a stand-up comic a couple months ago to a big show, we went to see Sebastian Maniscalco, who we love to death. And he's one of those kind of guys where he's telling you stories about something happened to him and his wife, and you find yourself like looking at your significant other and laughing like, we've been there, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's happened to us. And then you get other couples, you see them like, you know what I mean? Like, you've done that before, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it is very relatable. And I think it does become infectious because everybody in the room really relates to it, whether you're a man or a woman, because he's telling you his perspective and his wife's, you know?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the two perspectives.
Everybody gets it. Right. Everybody gets it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's kind of in on the joke, you know what I mean? Because the joke is essentially ourselves and our own idiosyncrasies as humans, you know?
Yeah.
So is there one person or well, okay, let me phrase it this way. Who's your comedy Mount Rushmore?
Oh, that's, man. So let's maybe that affect you personally would be good, because I would
your Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
My Mount Rushmore would probably be Bill Burr. I don't think anyone's doing it better. And I hate to even say like him, Chris Rock.
Couldn't agree more about Bill Burr though. And I like seeing him get a break there. He was in Pete Davidson's movie, man. I hope good things keep happening for him. You know?
Man. Yeah, absolutely. Chris Rock.
No doubt.
I recently watched Bigger and Blacker in the last couple months, because I was like, man, and just like go back and see these. I don't know if I've seen a better hour than that, because like from start to finish, people are fucking screaming, they're pushing each other, like the crowd's like on fire. It's insane. And
he's one of those guys, and he's one of those guys too, like with the good inflections in his voice, the way he tells a story, the way he paces the stage. He's got all the nuances down, you know?
Yeah. And then I got to put Dom in there just because you know, that's
special place.
Yeah, for sure. And then God, I think maybe man, this one's hard. Maybe Brian Regan. I gotta put Brian Regan in there. I mean, his stuff is so silly. I mean, it's really hard to.
And that just shows how subjective comedy really is, because there's obviously a lot of huge, you know, big marquee names that you have to leave off a list where people think like, oh, those names that you named aren't the GOAT. But like you said, comedy's so subjective. It's how those comedians affect you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And to your point about being subjective, I was thinking about this the other day. Like some people like if someone says to me, if they said, I think you're the funniest comic I've ever seen.
Right.
They are right, because that's their opinion.
Right.
In that same show, if someone comes up to me and goes, you are the worst comic I've ever seen, they are also right. because that's their opinion. So that, you know, it's the same thing as like looking at a painting, right? Like you take at comics, like someone gave me this analogy where it's like, okay, well, one is like a Picasso kind of abstract. The other one's like a realistic. One's a piece of fruit, and one's a night sky. And to say like, oh, which one's better? You're like, well, they're fucking completely different. They both make me feel something, but.
And to that point about the painting too, a lot of people will look and see things in those lines, and some people will just see them for what they are. Those look like a bunch of squiggly fucking lines up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't find anything in it. They're not moved by it at all. You know, I mean.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, the arts are just so subjective, which is why it just seems like it's such a feast or famine. You know, and where do you stand on what technology has done for the entertainment business? I know it's really hit musicians particularly a lot in the pocket, because a lot of their stuff can be streamed, but you know, also comedy albums are up on streaming platforms and stuff too. That dips into revenue.
Yeah. So, something happened with Spotify, and they took off a lot of comics for some reason. So. Unfortunately, and that's why I released the album, and then that's why I said like, okay, I had the video, I don't know what to do with it. I was not shopping it around really, because it was okay how it was shot, but it might be through Helium Studios, and they go, well, we're gonna do something else. So I just said I'll just release it myself, so anyone can have it. I think the social media and internet really not. it's hard to say because it levels the playing field a little bit because now anyone can put a clip up, and if it's funny and people like it, they'll like it or share it or whatever that may be. But now we're in a stage, and I've made this argument before. It used to be you got to move to LA or New York, period.
Right.
That's it. End of story.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing comics, in Michigan doing really well, and that's where they live. And the whole point is doing the road anyway.
Right.
So it doesn't matter technically. Like, yes, you will have more exposure in those cities, but if you're someone like me, and this is a great spot for my wife and kids, all our families here, I'm not going to roll the dice, unfortunately. And maybe that's my Achilles heel here, but I'm not going to roll the dice on a couple of dick jokes for my daughter's future,
Right.
So I would rather just, okay, that just means I have to work harder than ever. So
it instills even more of a work ethic in you.
Exactly.
It's inspiring. So if a comedian goes out and tours, do you get to pick? Like, do you get together with a bunch of other comics and say, let's go out and do this? How does it work with like promoters and stuff like that? How do you package together? What comics go out together? Are you able to go out with people that, are friends of yours? Do you have a circle or a pack of guys that you go out with, or is that all determined by, higher ups and business people?
That's mostly determined by higher ups and business people, but a lot of headliners, if they're doing a club and they give them the option, they will bring a feature, which in the middle guy with them. I've been lucky enough to do that with a couple of comics that headline, and then brought me Andy Woodhall, Joe List. They brought me to clubs, and I was very fortunate for that. But also then there's the other end where I'm in my hometown and I'm looking for a feature spot for the weekend, but they're like, oh well, this month every headliner's bringing their own feature, so that fucks me out of a thing. But I get it, because if you're on the road, you want to be with someone you want to hang with and all that stuff. But I have a couple of guys where if I headline somewhere, and sometimes they're like, oh, we have you a host and feature, and then you don't have a say. You're just all right, well, I'll do the show, and hopefully they're cool for the weekend or whatever. But if I have the option, I definitely I would bring them.
How about something like when you try to take your comedy and I don't know how you go about doing this. I'm assuming there's obviously going to be some degree of writing involved. Do you have somebody else that you write with? Have you ever thought along the lines of trying to pitch like a show or a sitcom or sit down and write a movie? You get these guys like Seth Rogen as a writing partner that doesn't like to appear in the movies with him, but they write together. Have you ever thought of creating on like a larger level than even beyond stand-up comedy? Is that your plan at all?
I mean, the Hummies VR comedy, that's always that's just fun. That's the improv gaming stuff. But as far as like writing a movie, TV, I've never thought about that. But there's sometimes the process is I'll write a joke and this goes for every comic. So I mean, I can't remember who it is. I think it's like Kevin Hart. That will like bring writers to a club with him and then go, hey, I'm going to do my set and you guys give me notes afterwards.
Right.
So that's, I think, the ultimate, hey, I need help with this or whatever. But all comics, even if it's just before an open mic, like, oh, you're working on anything? It's like, yeah, I'm working on this thing. And you just pitch them the premise or whatever. And then it's great because you have another person's perspective. There's been a lot of times where I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And sometimes I think I write better for other people. I'll watch their set and I'll go, hey man, I got an idea for you. What if you say this and then go here? Because I think I'm better at that. And I think other comics are better at that because there's no stakes for you, right? You're just saying what you think is funny. Sometimes you're up there and like, I don't know if I should say that or if I should broach that. But if you're just watching, you're just thinking of the funniest thing to say.
Or sometimes you might think it might play better from somebody else. You might think like, I can't see me saying that, but I can see him delivering that.
Absolutely. Yes. There's been a lot of jokes I come up with, not a lot, but there's been a couple of jokes where I go and it just doesn't fit me as like who I am. If I say it, it's fucking like comes out of left field. But if I'm like, this guy kind of goes in these places so he can say it.
Right. And by the way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Earlier
No.
today, I interviewed one of the guys who played in Prince's band, Prince and the Revolution, and
Oh.
even he said, I said, did Prince ever consider keeping any of those hit songs that he wrote for other people? He wrote Manic Monday and he gave it to the Bangles. He wrote Nothing Compares to You and gave it to Sinead O'Connor. And he said, no, Prince wrote those songs, but he knew that they would sound better coming from somebody else. They weren't quite his lane. So just kind of, gratis. Here you go. You know?
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he does versions of those songs, and I love his versions. I mean, I'm partial because I'm a big fan or whatever, but I mean, just to hand somebody over some shit that becomes like their best shit is pretty amazing,
Yeah.
I mean, those were those artists' best songs, and they were kind of like, in other words, Prince throwaways almost, know.
Yeah,
Here, I'll throw these away, and they'll become your number one hit. I mean, that's pretty fucking special.
Yeah, my garbage can is your number one.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking wild. So talk about a little bit about have there been any times when you've been out traveling or traveling in the circles that you do and doing shows where you yourself have ever bumped into anybody where you've been starstruck a little bit yourself?
Yeah. So I went to go see Brian Regan at a theater.
Yeah.
And then and this is in my my home Raleigh. And then I go to I had someone that knows him well say, hey, make sure you go to the club after the show, the theater show. I was like, okay. And so I went there, and Brian Regan is downstairs. He's at the bar. We're all just hanging out, and I got to like meet him and talk to him for a little bit. And I was that for me, that was like, oh fuck, dude, this is crazy. Cause I mean, I just said he's on my Mount Rushmore. So to just say a couple things was pretty awesome.
And it's hard not to fanboy sometimes too. I mean, I'm almost a 50-year-old man, so and I've done a bunch of interviews on here, a lot, and a lot of them are people that I've admired and been huge fucking fans of for years and years and years. But I do still feel like a little kid. That's what's so great about art, and I've talked about that with a couple of musicians. Sometimes, like, it's great to see them and know that they created a song that when I hear it now takes me back to when I was 15 years old. That's the beauty of like art. Sometimes it's just like, holy fuck, the music becomes literally, not to sound corny or like a Hallmark card, but like it's the soundtrack of your life. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's so many songs that I hear where it takes me back to exactly what I was doing. I remember the car I was driving, the road I was on. It's insane.
Well, Raleigh, North Carolina, though, just seems to be. I've got a good friend that lives down there, and my in-laws are in Cary, which is just outside of there. So they're very nearby. And I think I originally got turned on to you. I have a friend that I went to high school with who now lives down there, and we both kind of have the same type of sense of humor. I think he's seen you out a couple of times and just said, "I think you would dig this guy." He's in a North Carolina metal band down there called Outlier.
Yeah,
my friend Ray.
Yes.
Yeah. He's a very near and dear friend. I've had him on here. We've chopped it up about heavy metal and stuff. And, me and him kind of have the same kind of quirky sense of humor. So, he comes across stuff that he thinks that I would dig, or like, I think you'll like this guy's style a bit. So that's funny. So you do know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ray's great. I love him, and I need to catch a show. There's been 2 times where he's going to play, and I was like, I'm coming, and then the family's sick or something happens, and I go, I swear to God, I'm going to come.
So you're a legit fan of all that racket that he makes then, huh?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. It's right
up
my
alley. You like
alley.
extreme metal then? You like extreme heavy metal?
Yeah, I used to play, before comedy, I used to play hard rock. I used to play metal, and then I got in a band in college that played like thrash metal, and I was a drummer for all those bands. So and then one of the things that draws me to stand-up comedy is that it's all on you. You're not having to call people and be like, hey man, are we practicing Wednesday at 6? Well, us 3 can make it, but he can't, and then you gotta experience it. So it's so hard, dude.
I started to do that with this podcast, and several months back when I decided to do it, the only person I really wanted to have as a co-host was my son, who's 27, and we were kind of going to do like the father-son perspective and have people on here and kind of butt heads and play up the whole generational gap thing. And then he has a family with 4 children, so it got hard for him to carve out any time, to do it. And so like once I shopped around for other people to do it with, I kind of thought the same thing. Like, God damn it, if I want to do this interview with you tonight at 8, I don't got to worry about, geez, is my friend that I'm doing it with going to be awake and feel up to do an interview at 8 o'clock? It just got easier just to say, I know what times I can log on to the computer. I know what times I can do these fucking things. I mean, I'm just going to cut out the middle person. And as much as it is fun sometimes to have, a sounding board and another person that kind of bounce shit off of and another perspective, it just got to be too much,
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
It gets to be a pain in the ass. That's probably why the stand-up comedy just is probably a lot easier in some ways than keeping a band cohesively together,
Right. Yeah. It's totally up to you. If you're going to write a joke, go out, try to work on it, things like that. You work as hard as you want to,
Yeah.
I mean,
and I work in healthcare, so I'm a nurse during the day. So sometimes I come home and I purposely, I just don't want to have anything scheduled. I have days where I'm on my feet all day long, taking care of and giving of yourself to other people and getting them on the mend. And I have days where I just come home and it's like, fuck, I'm glad I don't have one scheduled tonight. I don't really feel like talking to nobody,
Sure. Yeah. There's been times where, I'll still go out, but there's some times where I'm just like driving to a mic and I'm like, I don't want to fucking do this. So it's crazy, but yeah.
And you're the guy on your way to make people laugh.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let's
see, make these people laugh or just drive off this fucking cliff right now.
And sometimes driving off the cliff would have been funnier.
Yeah. So do you have somebody in the family or like loved ones or anybody that you trust their opinion enough in your close circle that you ever bounce your material off of?
The only person would be I'll ask my brother about stuff, but so here and there because he's funny. Sometimes I'll just tell my parents what I'm working on, but honestly, my true north is my wife, because if I'm coming onto a subject that maybe I'm not that educated on, I like to stay down the fairway, right?
Yeah,
sometimes you like to get on the fringe and see what you can do.
Yeah.
But because
in the end, you realize it's better to play to your strengths, though.
Yes.
Stay in your lane, as the kids say nowadays.
Exactly. Yeah. So if I come up with a punchline that I'm like, this is kind of fucked up, but I think it's more funny than it is fucked up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I will throw it by her, and if she gives me a thumbs up, then I'm like, okay, then this is okay to say, but sometimes I'll toss something by her and she goes, oh, well, I thought when you said that, I thought you meant this instead of that. And I go, oh, fuck, I didn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want anyone to think that.
Yeah.
So, so I'll always pitch something that's a little dicey by her first.
And now, are you somebody that takes, like, let's say like your album was up on some platform, like let's say somebody streamed it and stuck it up on YouTube, even just with the audio or something. Are you one of these kind of people who gets down in the comment section and takes criticism? Not that you get down there and have a retort for everybody, but are you somebody that looks at comments and takes that stuff, too hard? Like when you go, oh, here's a person that commented they loved it. Now here's the next 6 or 7 that says this guy isn't fucking funny at all. You know what I mean? Like how do you take that kind of stuff and process it?
So everyone says don't read the comments. Just don't read them.
Yeah.
Some comments I will take with a grain of salt, where it's like where you'll read something and then be like, I've had recent run-ins with people after a show, honestly, and they're not unlike the new stuff I'm working on,
right?
And they're not being malicious or anything, but I would like to hear their point of view. Why is this? If you are upset by this joke,
right?
I want to know, and I want to know how I can make it more palatable for someone like you.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So, I don't, and a lot of comics, and probably I wish I was more like this, but want to say, oh, I don't give a fuck, I'm making jokes or whatever. But I mean, I want to, my whole goal is like, we're all there to do the same thing. I want to make everyone laugh, and that's just not possible. But Sorry, what was the original question?
About how you handle the criticism.
Oh, the
of
criticism,
people
right.
in the comment section. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's yeah, I had a couple clips on my Instagram do very well. And then you're like, oh, cool. You know, people are like, this is funny. Oh, that's hilarious. And then they, you know, they're sharing their stories. And then, you know, and and then all the comments are great. And then you have one that's like, how is this even funny? And you're like, well, I have a clip of like people, a lot of people laughing at it. You know, I'm not want to showcase. I'm not going to showcase anything that puts me in a bad light where it's just like, oh yeah, let me show you this clip where I suck.
Yeah. Here's the night that I bombed.
Right. Yeah. Someone, and then I was like, okay, you can't make everyone happy. I had a clip where I posted about my kids, and I talked about how I was a mistake, and it was about me, right? And then some girl got on there and said, you're incredibly offensive. And I was like, this joke is about how I'm a mistake. Like, I literally didn't talk about anybody else. And I was like, how the fuck is this possibly offensive to anyone else? If anyone should be offended, it's me.
Right.
But like, and that's when I was like, okay, everything I say, someone's going to think it's the most unfunny thing they've ever heard. And that's just the way the game is now. So,
and it's kind of tough too, because when you're trying to toe the line and be politically correct, then people think you're too pretentious and dry. And then when you're too shocking, you know what I mean? Then people are like, oh, this guy's too graphic, too much. You know what I mean? You're never going to please everybody. I've said it on here before. The thing I hate the most about the comment section is I think when people are giving you a piece of themselves, which is essentially what art is, whether it's telling a joke, you know, putting your song up, you know, putting your hip hop rap up there, your poem, whatever. If it's not your thing, just keep it moving though. The people that go out of their way, you know, to type like a diatribe on there about why you're not funny and everything. I mean, you know what I mean? If it's not your cup of tea, but dump it on somebody though is really tough, because essentially that's a big step saying, hey, this art is a piece of me and I'm offering it up to the world. You know what I mean? You know, hopefully people will find some enjoyment out of it. And if you don't, just, you know, accept that. Keith Hernandez back there in his playing days used to handle criticism just by beating people to death with a baseball bat. But he was also doing a couple grams of cocaine a day back then, though. So that changes the perspective of things a lot, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me at all when I hear of baseball players, and this is not a bit or anything, man, but like I've read about so many baseball players, you know, that have had cocaine problems. So, and then I just think though, man, that they are staring at long white lines all day long out on the field. You know what I mean? Like,
it's funny.
It's crazy when you think about it. You know what I mean? It's a game that just breeds like, you know what I mean, cocaine use.
Right. Yeah. They're like you just said, they're used to seeing it. It's like, this is just another
batter's box, everything.
That's hilarious.
So if a bit doesn't work, like, you know, what's the creative process like when you definitively know something doesn't work? Do you scrap the idea altogether, or do you really say, geez, there's something funny in here, let me rework it? Like, how long do you spend like on a joke, like before you discard it and say, this fucking thing just doesn't work?
I've I'll do it. I will do a joke maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. Like, even if it bombs one time, I don't change a thing. And I'm like, maybe it was something the way I said it, whatever. So it has to bomb like 5 times in a row, and you got to really take it on the chin to be like, okay, this definitely doesn't work. It wasn't the crowd. It wasn't the way I said it. I didn't stutter. I didn't, whatever it was that threw thing off. I'm trying to X out all the variables. But then you go, okay, this isn't funny, but like there's something in you that's like, God, I feel like this is funny, right? Like,
you don't want to let it go.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to let it go. And sometimes you go back, you retool it, you say, okay, let's take out all this funny stuff. This gets a little giggle here. What is it that's funny on this line that I say? How can I build off that? And sometimes you go back and read, and sometimes you're just missing like maybe the end or the point of view. And you can change that, and you go, oh fuck, that's how that'll work like that. And honestly, most of the times for me, if it doesn't work well or good out of the gate, it's fucked. But I still put it aside. I have jokes that are like that I was just going through from like 2017 that I've looked at, that I'm like reading through. I'm like, if I still think it's funny now, then I'll keep it. But there's been a couple where I'm like, oh yeah, it's fucking awful, and I just delete it right then and there. So
yeah, but the good thing about a joke is that like usually a real good zinger just stays funny, and you can even usually even elicit a chuckle, even if it's a joke you may have heard 3 or 4 times in your life and maybe forgot that you heard it. Like obviously,
nice.
like a lot of songs are timeless too, but then a lot of them you're just like, oh god, I never want to hear Freebird again. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
I mean, you think they're timeless, but really people get to the point where they're like, I could stand to never hear that again.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of like jokes. And one of the guys that now, are you somebody that's thinking of jokes like like when you're creating, is there a time that you're able to kind of disassociate yourself and decompress and like not having like points of view and things that you want to turn into funny bits throughout the day? Because I get a sense when I look at somebody like a Robin Williams, where he just always seemed turned on. It's almost like being like a mad genius, I imagine, at some points. Like the guy just always seemed on and just couldn't like ever turn the switch off sometimes. I think in a way it could leave you, creatively inspired, but that's still a tortured soul,
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. Yes, a lot of times throughout my day, something mundane will happen or something slightly funny, or I'll notice something and I have to type it in my phone and go, what is it about that? What is it about that? And so it's like, sometimes you're missing what's going on in life because you're trying to fucking
you're looking for the punchline and everything.
Yes. Yeah. and that's the problem. But yeah, I have like gone on vacation and been like, all right, I'm not in that mode. Like, let's just turn it off. Let's decompress, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then something really funny will happen, and I have to type it in
it's going on around us all time. Like I just imagine like somebody like Jerry Seinfeld, all of a sudden he's looking like red lights, what do we need, what I mean, and all of a sudden he's turning into a bit, or like crosswalks, what I mean, like all of a sudden every little mundane thing that he's noticing out on the streets all of a sudden becomes funny. You ever notice how people walk across the street? You ever what I mean, like everything could technically be worked into a bit. It's got to be hard sometimes, like to not say, God, I want to find something funny about that,
Yeah. If something catches your eye, then you're probably not the only one,
Right.
One of the things about being like we were talking about being relatable, one of the things that I found that I didn't know, I had a joke that I did on the album where I was talking about how I saw a lot of stuff way earlier than and it was, and the part that I get into it is that I saw like these, like I had 2 older brothers, so I saw like these horror movies way too early. I'd be like 7 years old, and I don't want to do the bit here, but I put that clip online. It got a lot of traction, and most of the comments were, I have an older sibling, and I watched this when I was this age, and I was like, I didn't even realize like that was the part that connected, but I mean, blown away by all the people commenting their experiences.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that is so universal to see something so early. And it's due to having an older sibling.
Yeah. So if people are down there in the North Carolina area or anywhere, like where can they find you? Where can they check out your comedy? I found your Incognito album on Apple Music, but that was after Ray had told me about you. But so obviously your album is on there, so it is up on platforms to find. Anything else pertinent that's going on that you want to let people know about?
Yeah, sure. So I had the full video up. I just uploaded it 2 months ago. Of you can just type in Mark Brady Incognito comedy special, and that's on YouTube for free because not everyone has iTunes.
Yep.
And just if you follow me on Instagram, I'm putting together hopefully a tour here in the early next year. So it's at Mark Brady, and that's with 3 Y's on Instagram, and I'll be posting dates and things like that there.
Hey, what a coincidence. I'm Rex Ruger with 3 X's.
Now, why, can I ask why? Well, the 3 X's might be,
I don't know.
It's a little telling.
I mean, it's kind of a nod to the 80s. If I'm going to play up the whole David Lee Roth's son thing, I thought that it sounded in that lineage of great glam / sleaze metal names. I mean, you get a guy like Nikki Sixx. He shouldn't have 2 K's in his first name and 2 X's in his last name. Right. That's way over the top. So I'm going to one up Nikki Sixx with an extra X.
Okay. And I want to make sure I follow you, because I don't know if I do there. What was the name again?
Pod Scum.
Pod Scum.
Pod Scum. Yes. Yes,
But with
I'll send you. Yeah, I'll send you a link to the page.
yeah,
and
please.
you know, when I'm going to air the episode, and I am a few behind, but it won't take long. I'll certainly send you a link, you know, to our specific episode too. But yeah, I'll send you a link to check out stuff on the page. And again, you know, I've only started doing it in the last couple months, so I'm finding that just getting content up there and watching it build kind of organically. Not a lot of subscribers. Got a lot of interesting interviews up there and a lot more to come out. Some of them get more views than others, but I'm hoping that when I can really start to tease it more and pull some clips from those interviews and some good gold from those interviews and kind of tease them with like little TikTok things, that maybe I'll draw people back, and hopefully they'll go back like I have with like, you know, old episodes of Howard on YouTube or Joe Rogan or whatever. You go back and rediscover those, and then hopefully those will climb. The part that I knew would be a struggle that me and my son talked about in the beginning is just getting content up, because, you know, when you're in the early stages, you don't want to drive a lot of people to your YouTube page and then have them say, okay, you had 3 shows there, I watched them all, now what? So I made sure that I stockpiled a bunch and had them done and in the can first, then started releasing them on YouTube so I could kind of keep up and then kind of scale back. Because when I started, I was doing sometimes like 2 or 3 a day, and then I have a day job too. I was out with a couple of detached retina surgeries, so I made good use of that time. I just started. I was home all day, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
Anybody that wanted to chop it up, I was just like, fucking fine. And I'm reaching out, and I'm finding that a lot of people are receptive to doing it, because in the music world now, especially musicians, a lot of them, you know, it's feast or famine. Like I said before, they're making their money off of live shows and peddling their merchandise. And it's not such a glamorous life like it used to be.
No. And I think that's one of the things that that's really changed music and comedy, where like you release an album and you really don't make any money off it at all. You're basically showcasing, hey, this is what, if you like this, come see me live. And that's where you make a little money. I mean, depending on the venues and things like that you're doing, but like, it's harder. I mean, I don't want to compare arts, but like, if you come up with a great song and I want to go see that band live, you can hear the same song. Comedy is turned into, now that it's on an album, I better not hear that joke again. I'm in between right now, where I have about 20 minutes of new stuff and I'm still doing 20 minutes off the album, but people who are coming to see me don't fucking know me. So you know what I mean? Like I'm not huge. So I have that kind of luxury where I'm just like, here's my new hour immediately. But yeah, man, it's like, it's hard. I since I do play music, I was talking to my best friend, he still plays. And he's like, do you think music or comedy is harder? And I was like, I think comedy is harder, not because I was like, think of it this way. The only way, I was like, if I could compare it, it would be like if a musician, the only way to practice music was in front of people. So getting a brand new guitar, learning a G chord, and when you first start out, people are giving you 3 minutes at a time. So learning how to strum, learning what chords are, like the only time you can practice is in front of people. And so that's the only hard part, is that that's it. Like I wish I could come up with some sort of hack of making people laugh in this fucking room, but I just have to go out and do it.
Well, the hard part is too with these musicians is you know, and I've talked about this on here before, you've got the you've got the American public's attention for much shorter amounts of time now, where people aren't sitting and enjoying the whole immersive experience of listening to an album. You know, back in the 70s, people throw on Dark Side of the Moon and who knows, you know, and enjoy their particular drug and sit there and listen to the whole goddamn thing, you know what I mean? And you enjoyed every song, you know, was kind of, you know, flowed into the next one, just like we talked about how comedy and the jokes kind of have to flow in. And now, you know, it seems like more of a singles driven world. It's like, okay, I've got 10 minutes a day to listen to music. Show me your best fucking shit or I'm moving on and I'm finding somebody else. You know what I mean? People don't care about the 12 song, you know, opus that you just created. They just want to hear the best 1 or 2. But you know, if you're an artist, this is a labor of love for you. You've created now essentially the 10 or 12 songs on an album, and you can't give the fucking music away. You know, I mean, you know, nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? They're going to go take what they want for free, and they're just going to be like, you know, okay, you know, I don't know if anybody really gets into, you know, deep tracks anymore, you know, or deep cuts, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, the attention span and people's the content machine. Like I just posted a clip about, you know, me doing crowd work, and it was there's this really funny moment that happened, and I am literally like the original clip is 2 minutes long. I go, that's too long.
Yeah.
So I'm literally taking punchlines out to give you the best punchlines to chop
Yeah.
it down to 1:10.
I know.
So I'll
Yeah.
post the whole thing on YouTube, but for if someone's scrolling and I want to keep their attention, it's like I have to give them this condensed form of
Right.
comedy.
That's how it is on like TikTok. Like you're bringing up a video and people better razzle dazzle you in the first 10 seconds or you're scrolling. Okay, nothing going on in this fucking video. I mean, you know what I mean? You got to blow your load and give it to them like immediately, or else people are just like, I'm going on to the next thing. You know what I mean? You've got people's attention, and you know, but people's minds are in so many different places. I feel like that. I feel like more than they ever were before. Just people don't pull their nose out of their phone. And I mean, you know, if you're lucky enough to get 6 or 8 hours of sleep and then work 8 hours a day, and then what, when you get a little time for yourself to listen to music, and then it's even tougher to go in and find and discover new music. It's not for a lack of a lot of bands. There's still a huge influx of bands, but it seems like everyone's grabbing for the same nickel, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like everyone's out there, like, you know, the days of the rock star getting the big, you know, recording contract and getting put on the lavish tour bus and, you know, groupies and all this kind of fun. That seems like a long gone time ago. That's gone.
Yeah.
That's absolutely gone. I mean, I don't think those days are ever coming back. You know, they're not, unfortunately. I mean, you know, even vinyl has kind of made a little bit of a resurgence, but for the most part, if that fad dies out again, we're going to live to see the death of the physical product. Like I remember opening music, as you probably do too, and you'd open up the gatefold. I've talked about this before on here, you know, of like a cassette, and you pour over those liner notes and read the lyrics and who they thanked and every fucking single thing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was the whole experience. Your jaw was you know, wide open looking at the album art. You know, I mean, it was a whole thing, and now that's just gone. Like now it's just, you know, hey, just go find your song and listen to it. You know.
Yeah. It does suck, but it's funny you mentioned that. I had when I came out with my album, I had a couple people hit me up and they go, hey, do you have any physical copies? I was like, what? It's like, you want me to make physical copies? That's crazy.
You mean like on a CD and stuff?
Right. Yeah. Oh, and I talked to another comic that has a couple albums, and I go, hey man, do you sell like physical copies of your CD after? He goes, I bought a box of 50 2 years ago and I have 48. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So like that's a thing of the past. I mean, even on my computer, I don't have a CD player on my computer. I mean, that's gone. Software that, you know, putting in any CD. I don't even know if I have a CD player in the house.
I don't think they're going to keep putting them in cars. They're going to get away from it. Yeah,
you're right. You're absolutely right. I think our newer car, it does not have a CD player.
You're being forced into a Bluetooth world.
Yeah.
You know, you just are. Whether you like it or not, you're going to go kicking and screaming. You know, I mean, it's you know, essentially, I stopped buying CDs too because my wife was like, we have an Apple Music account, you know,
exactly.
Get all your CDs on there, you know what I mean? And you know, I wasn't buying them at a record number, you know what I mean? I did, you know, it did die down a little bit, but I did used to like to go out, plop the $15 down if it's a band that I really, really love and want to support, because I know that money's going into their coffers. And I think people just automatically think that, like, you know, musicians don't have a right to make a living. You know, every time a band gets back together, oh, this is a cash grab. Well, these guys do want to make money. You know, I mean, like, it is a profession at the end of the day. You know, I mean, you know, everybody's not, you know, Bon Jovi or Bono able to live a huge rock star, and even those guys are only able to live the life that they are because they existed back when albums were huge. You know, John Bon Jovi or Bono comes out today, man, and they're not, you know, I mean, they're not making a dime either.
Yeah, they're fucking making you upload it on their on your phone. Remember when that fucking came out? You do it like have you don't have a choice. This is yours now. Yeah, that was weird. It was like forced down your throat. Here, here, you want the new YouTube album? Nah, not really. No, you're getting the new YouTube album. It or fucking not, or you will have to answer to Bono at your front door, wondering like why you deleted this off your phone. Well, listen, man, it's been great chopping it up with you, man. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and coming on here, man. And hopefully we can keep in touch and we can get up here and do it again sometime. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. I appreciate it, and best of luck with everything going forward, man. Same to you. Thanks. I'll be tuned in waiting, man, for the Mark Brady World Takeover. I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Talk to you later, brother. All right, man. Thanks. All right. Thank you, man. Later.
comedian Mark Brady, stand-up comedian Mark Brady. Go check him out. Got a very funny album on Apple Music called Incognito. Mark Brady out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Got to give them stand-up comics some love, man. They're out there doing the hardest thing in the world, man, making us laugh, smile, whatever. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And until next time, remember to, Pops don't want to say it. Keith, never mind. I'll tell him. Take it easy and keep it sleazy.